So just like we discussed what the meaning of slope is in real terms in a couple of videos ago, I also want to talk about how we can interpret the y-intercept in certain situations. So I'm going to read to you what the fancy definition is in the book, and then we're going to talk about it in simpler terms. So the book will say the value of the y-intercept describes the value of the dependent variable when the independent variable is 0. Well, that's a mouthful. Let me get to an example to help to highlight what this really means. So another way to think about this is think about the y-intercept as like a starting point. Okay, so for example, let's look at Josh's car trip. So it looks like on my y-axis it says the number of miles from Josh's home and the time in hours, right? So when I look at my vertical axis, I can see that my y-intercept is at 60. Right? So I can just write that my value of my y-intercept is 160. If I said 60, sorry about that. So that's 160 miles. Right? So that's 160 miles when his time is 0. In other words, when he starts. So what does that really mean? That means that he starts 160 miles from home. Okay, so let's do another few examples so that you get more comfortable with this idea. So here's a graph of temperature versus time. And so if I'm trying to interpret what the meaning of either the slope or the y-intercept are, I'm going to look and see what my labels are. So I see that this is temperature in degrees Celsius and the time in minutes. So in general, it looks like whatever it is that I have is starting out at a fairly high temperature and then is cooling off down to 0 degrees Celsius. Right? So let's interpret, we can interpret the slope, but let's just interpret the y-intercept. First I need to find it. So over here it is, this is where my graph hits the y-axis. Now I can't talk about negative time. My graph's not going to go back into the negative zone. So I'm going to assume that my y-intercept is right at 250 degrees Celsius, right? So my value of my y-intercept is 250 degrees Celsius. Well, what does that mean? That means that that was the starting temperature of my whatever it is that I'm measuring the temperature of. So like for instance, let's say I might have had some boiling water that I ended up cooling off in the freezer, and over a certain number of minutes I waited till it was frozen, right? Just as an example. Okay, so hopefully you're getting the hang of this. Let's try a few more examples, and I really want you to be thinking about this, not just sort of taking what I have to say, but really trying the examples by pausing the video. Okay, so again, I'm going to start by looking at the title and then my labels. So this is salary on commission. So if you don't know what commission is kind of like you get paid a certain amount of bonus money outside of your wages, depending on how many sales you make. So the more things you sell, the more money that you get. So it's kind of how I believe it works when you sell cars at a car lot. So the more cars you sell in a month, the more commission you make on top of your salary. So it looks to me like this is saying, okay, money earned versus number of sales. So this is probably for maybe a single day. I'm not really sure. So let's examine what that might mean. And you might want to pause the video to try and think about what it means. So I'm going to find my y-intercept. It's right here at 100. So that means that with 0 sales, okay, 0 sales, in other words, no sales, that the money that was earned is $100. So there's probably more than one way of interpreting this, but the way that I interpret this is, let's say as Joe, and Joe is showing up at his place of work, and before he even starts the day, he knows for sure that he's making $100, just sort of like for showing up. But then, for every sale that he makes, he's going to earn a little bit of commission. It looks like this is a difference of about 25 bucks. So it looks like to me that he's making 25 bucks per sale, right? So what is the meaning of the y-intercept in this case? It means that's what his salary is just for showing up. So his salary without commission added on. Okay, so this is our last graph. It's a little bit different than some of the others because I can see that I have some numbers in the negative zone here of my graph, and we need to really think about that a little bit differently. So take a minute, pause the video, and try to see if you understand what the meaning of the y-intercept is in this case. All right, so when I look at this, I see that my y-intercept is at negative $50,000. Okay, so my intercept is at negative $50,000, right? So let's take a look at what the axes labels are. So this is profit and number of sales. So my question to you is, well, how can you have a negative profit? Right? Profit is money that you make. Well, one way of thinking about this is, let's say you're a business owner and you had sort of a startup on your business, right? So maybe before you were able to make any profits, you had to invest some of your own money. So you're sort of in the red, you're in the negative zone. So you borrowed money from the bank or whatever to the tune of $50,000. That's what you owe. So before you actually make any profit, you have to consider paying back that loan. That's those startup costs. Looks to me like after somewhere, exactly between, not really sure, but somewhere between 250 and 500 sales is where, looks like exactly between, is where they hit the zero mark and they paid back their loan, and everything after that point seems to help them get some profit, right? So overall, after 1,000 sales, they ended up with a profit of, if I extrapolated or interpolated, then I could get the value for the amount of profit that they made. So in this case, the meaning of my y-intercept is that they still owe money that they might have borrowed from the bank before, and that's why it's a negative value. So that's the sort of their startup costs of the business. So if you need to get some extra help with this or have me explain one-on-one, I have no problem with that. Make sure you come in and talk to me, and we'll go through it and help you better understand these ideas. They're not completely easy, but they are important, so make sure that you get that cleared up.